All right. What's going on, everybody? This is a special episode of HF Pod. If you're listening, you will hear that I am here with a special guest who I will introduce in one moment. We will be back later this week with our next episode in our series. We are going to be talking Summer 94, and we will see if our guest has anything that he wants to say about Summer 94. But I wanted to have a quick chat with my friend Scott Chasolen. Hey, Scott.
Hey, RJ, how's it going?
Good. Great. You were on several weeks ago when you popped in. We were talking about the Reprise shows. Scott plays the keys and sings and is one of the four masterminds in Reprise. How many Fish shows have you seen?
Well over 200. I think around 220. Yeah.
220. Jesus. So you're welcome. You're welcome here anytime to talk about Fish, but we're going to talk about Reprise a little bit. But we are first going to talk about your new album, Full Circle. And there's a show on Friday in New York, right? Album release show. Well,
Yeah.
tell us about that show so that people who are in New York or listening or they're around New York can find out about that before we talk about the album.
Okay. The show is Friday, October 4th at the Bitter End in Greenwich Village, 7:30 p.m. And I'll be playing with my band, which is kind of constantly changing. But this incarnation of the band is Chris DeAngelis on bass, who also plays in Reprise. Ryan Ball on guitar, who's been my Machine bandmate for 18 years, and Randy Schrager on drums, who is a great drummer that I've had the pleasure of playing with many times. So it'd be the four of us, and we'll be playing my original music Friday night at 7:30 at the Bitter End.
That's awesome. And I think the first time that we met at Ardmore Music Hall, but then you were at the Bitter End and you jumped up on keys at Ardmore Music Hall and at Bitter End when we did our HF Pod 10th anniversary party.
I did. You're right. At the Bitter End, I jumped up and I think I played 2001.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Before we get into it, because we do have a episode on Friday about summer 1994. Do you have any
Oh.
summer 1994 like any quick things that you want us to know or shows that you saw or just it seemed like you had thoughts?
Quick things? I don't know about quick things, but I have a lot to say about summer of '94. I saw many shows that year. I think I saw maybe 50 or 60 shows that year, including most of the summer tour and a lot of the
Wow.
spring tour. Yeah, it was.
So
It was a hell of a
you
year.
were traveling.
Yeah, I was all over the place that year.
That's amazing. Do you have any show from summer 90 or I mean, I was going back and I collected all the tapes, like, I've listened to them all a lot. But when you listen to them chronologically, it's like kind of crazy how many awesome shows there are in a row.
Yeah,
So
there's so many awesome shows. I mean, the one that sticks out to me is the Gamehenge Great Woods show, where
yeah.
they played Gamehenge in the first set, and then the second set, Stash from a Live One, was played that night, and that was one of the greatest improvisational moments I've ever witnessed. Was that Stash?
That is amazing. That's amazing. Okay, well, we got to talk more about that tour with you because it's kind of like going from starting basically with that OJ show and then the Chicago show the next night and then Columbus and then it just kind of keeps like there's so many classic shows on that tour. It's like kind of
Yeah,
hard to believe.
it's insane. And then there's the Gamehenge Hoist show from Charleston, which was a couple weeks before Great Woods.
Yeah,
There's so much. There's so much. There's Old Orchard Beach from Maine, which gets overlooked. Nobody ever talks about that. That was unbelievable. Big Birch, which Reprise attempted to recreate a few months ago. That was insane. And the
I would say
second night,
recreated.
we did recreate it. Yes. The second night of Great Woods is actually, I think I like that show even better than the Gamehenge show. I will go to my grave saying this. It's the greatest Harry Hood that they ever did. Second night of Great Woods, 7/9/94. It just has so much of a dynamic ramp up, and the ending is so euphoric and incredible. If you have not listened to that Harry Hood, you must. Unfortunately, there's no good recordings of it, but it's just unbelievable. It's my favorite ever.
Awesome. Okay, great. So we have that, and I have that to go to for our Friday episode. Thank you for that.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so so let's talk about your album. I got to listen to your album Full Circle. Really interesting music, especially maybe for people who know you best through these various groups you've been playing with, like The Machine and Ulu and others, and now Reprise. But why this album now, or when did you decide that you were going to do another solo album?
Well, I'm kind of always perpetually writing songs and releasing music, and none of it has ever sounded like Ulu or jam music at all. And I don't think it's something intentional that happens. It's just what comes through. I'm a channel for creativity, and whatever that emerges as, that's what it is. So this album, I wrote a lot of these tunes during the pandemic, like in the late pandemic of winter of 21, early 22. All the songs came out pretty much within a few weeks. I wrote the whole record then, and I've released a single each month for the past year. So really, the record could have come out a year ago, but I wanted to put out each song. So now the songs are a little bit older because of that, but it seems like the right time to do it after all the singles have been released. And yeah, it's full circle, because a lot of times where we end up in our life is somewhere we've been before, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was gonna I mean, I figured that that was kinda part of that. You also have, like what I like about these songs is that they're well, first of all, like you said, I mean, I don't hear really any inspiration in these songs that come from any jam band, like, they're pop songs and in the best way, you know? It sounds like you're really, like, taking inspiration from I don't know, I could name, like, 20 artists, but I assume that this is kind of like your where your heart is in terms of songwriting, and then you know, a lot of your playing and stuff is just a totally different area.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a surprise to people, especially to the Ulu fans, because I've been putting out original music for 25 years. And when I first put out a solo album, I think this is when Ulu was active, like in the late 90s. People expected it to be jazzy funk music, and it just wasn't at all. And everyone was confused. Like, what is this guy doing? You know, what? How come this doesn't sound like the things that we've seen him do? And I don't really have an answer for why it doesn't sound like that. It's just where I'm at with my writing. I think I'm always striving to just capture a feeling or express an emotion through a song, and usually that ends up being something short and simple. So
That's really cool, and I really like a lot of the tracks on here, and I do think it's like, you know, singer-songwriter and pop, but there's, like, some Steely Dan influence in there, like, and clearly, like, it feels like and maybe it's just because I know you, like, I feel like you take the like, there's the song itself, and then there's the lyrics, and the lyrics are really good and interesting, and then there's, like it feels like then there's, like, a keyboard phase, you know? Not to the song structure, but to, like, the creation of it, but I'm curious, like, how do you create? Because do you write at the piano, or do you write lyrics first, or how do those songs usually come together?
my process is always different. Each song kind of comes into being in a different way. A lot of these songs I actually wrote on the guitar,
Hmm,
um, and because I was in a place where I couldn't play a piano, so I would be like quietly at night playing acoustic guitar, figuring out how to write what I was feeling and hearing. And then after I wrote them, I would either translate to piano or keys or something else, you know. But probably half of them I wrote on guitar, half of them I wrote on piano. And I think for this album, most of it was music came first, lyrics came next. Maybe a couple
hmm.
songs, lyrics were for the last song, which is just piano and vocal. That was a poem that I had written, and then that became a song after the lyrics.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's always different for me. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that because I feel like everyone does it a little differently, right?
yeah.
Um, and I feel like some like This Town was a song I was just listening to before this. It's like a, you know, really um like vivid kind of, you know, picture that you're painting, and then you can kind of hear the varied kind of keyboards that come in. And I assume you had fun like layering in all the different, piano, synth, like everything else that you use. Did you have How does that part work? Because you have so many options, and that's kind of like where you live most of the time in terms of live music.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing to do is to be in the studio and come up with different parts and use different instruments and textures and sounds. And so I used on that song, it's a acoustic piano is the main driving force behind it. And this piano here in my apartment is the piano that's on the whole record. I recorded everything here at home first, and the guitars and stuff I did here. I played all the guitars and all the
Oh,
keys.
wow.
Yeah, and this town has a lap steel on it, which I love playing the lap steel. Just has a different sensibility about it than
Yeah.
a string guitar, you know. So I would record my basic track of either piano or guitar, depending on what the song was, and then I would send it digitally, virtually by email to my drummer, and he would record his drum tracks with that, and then send it back to me. And I would, add a few more things, and then I'll send it to my bass player, and then he would play his bass line and send it back to me. And it kind of, the whole
Wow.
record was made remotely like that.
That is crazy. And then where, like, I was going to ask about the production process, but so you guys weren't really in the studio recording those songs.
We were not.
Wow. Who's playing bass? Is that Chris or?
No, Adam Minkoff is playing bass on the record.
Okay.
There's my
Okay.
longtime friend and bandmate. He's played bass on all my original stuff, and he was in the Machine for a few years. And he's kind of been in and out of the band randomly over the years, but great musician, great friend.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So okay, so you have, and I think one of the things I really like about this album is like there's a lot of varied styles. There is like the more, I guess, what I would call singer songwriter stuff. There's much more jazzy approaches. There's rock tunes. There's, you know, did does it like, do you seek out to make something thematic, or are you just, it sounds like you have a lot of songs that you're working on. Like, how did you put them together, and did you want them to kind of touch on these various genres while still telling a story? And if so, like, is that like, is there a larger narrative, or is it like more just like how the songs came together?
Well, because the songs were all written around the same time, basically within a few weeks of each other, it was a pretty clear snapshot of what I was actually experiencing in my life at that time.
Hmm.
Um, One of the big things that happened while I was writing this was Joe Pasquarel from The Machine died, who was one of my greatest friends and bandmates that I toured with for a really long time. So a couple of the songs are about his death. And that seems pretty dark, but it's just, what I was feeling in my heart at the time. As
Yeah.
far as the styles go, I don't know if any of it was really intentional. It's how things come out for me.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
while we're creating the arrangement, and I'm talking on the phone with the drummer as he's about to record it, we'll brainstorm a couple of things. We talk about the groove, or talk about the approach, or what kind of feel we want for it. And so a lot of that happens, and after the writing has already occurred. It's like, how do you put this together, and where do the pieces fit?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I feel like I said, I hear like so many different influences. Do you see any particular musical influences on this record, or on like the writing and production of these songs?
Well, it's funny because I think any artist isn't going to be able to see that in themselves the same way that somebody who is listening to it will see it.
Right, right.
But I have gotten feedback on this album that they hear Steely Dan in a couple of the songs. Maybe just because of I played a Rhodes, and it's sort of like a slicker arrangement. And I did make a little nod to Steely Dan at the end of one of the tunes. It's called Chasing Rainbows, and there's a drum solo at the end, kind of like what Steve Gadd would have done on the Asia track. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That in that track, "Chasing Rainbows," that's kind of like where I heard that. I was like, "Oh,
yeah,
this is," but the production is so. I can't believe that was all done remotely. It sounds great.
yeah, it was, the recording was done remotely, and then it was mixed by Ryan Ball, who's playing guitar on the gig. He didn't play on the record, but he's a great engineer and a great friend of mine, and we've worked on like basically all of my records together since I've known him, which has been a long time. So the last 5 or 6 albums he is mixed in his studio, which is in Paramus, New Jersey, called the Gearbox.
Nice. That is
Yeah.
awesome. So people who are listening or watching, again, there's a show on Friday at the Bitter End, this Friday, October 4th at the Bitter End, album release party. Anyone who's in town or around New York should come. And Scott, we should talk about Reprise quickly, but I know it's clear to me from seeing you play, like you love being on stage and you love playing music for people. So I know that this show on Friday is going to be awesome.
Yeah, the show, I'm really excited for the show because I don't play my original music that often. So, if anyone wants to come and check it out, we are going to be playing the whole new album. And we'll stretch out some of the tunes for some jams, of course.
Yeah,
Can't
yeah,
resist
yeah.
that.
Gotta bring the jams.
Yeah.
Speaking of the jams, so we have one more Reprise show on the books for 2024. It's actually happens to be 1 month from today, November
Oh,
2nd. Yeah,
you're right.
up in
Yeah.
Albany. I talked about it on the last episode of HF Pod, and we'll keep plugging it. But I just want to say that it was booked before Fish announced their shows in Albany the week before. So I just want people to know that we
It
just didn't
was.
get it. We just didn't announce it fast enough.
We didn't
Um,
announce it in time, and it's just the most bizarre thing that they would have booked a run of shows in the same place a week before that. It's just
yeah,
so bizarre.
it's crazy, but we decided to go for it anyway, and
Yeah.
because it's gonna be fun. I think people here have heard us talk about Reprise, and we posted that amazing pro shot video from MK Devo from the Bridgeport
Mm.
show, which we've linked to. But tell us, like, from your perspective, you've played in so many bands and played so much, so many different kinds of music over the years. Like, what is it about this band that's exciting for you?
Well, everybody in this band is just such a badass musician. It makes me better playing with them, and I think we all feel that way. And we're playing music that we all love so deeply. For me, playing Fish music it's just a kind of a religious experience. Like, oh my God, I get to play these songs that I've been, freaking out about for 30 something years. It's just so much fun. I love it. It's a lot of hard work to learn how to play these songs accurately and correctly, but it's worth the effort because we're just having a great time, and I love those guys. And hopefully, if you come see Reprise, you'll have as much fun as we are.
The last shows, and I think those were shows 5 and 6, right?
Yeah.
Those, I feel like, to me, the I don't see the prep, but it feels like the band's getting not only like the compositions, you guys are like, adding your own little flair while also, being completely locked in on those. But then also, like, the shows that you guys are covering are, they're not it's not a Dark Star Orchestra thing where it's like every note is recreated, because I think it's a little bit of a mix between like that and a J-Rad approach where it's like, your own interpretations. First of all, how much prep does it take for one show on average?
Well, I don't know if I could, spell out any math for that, but it takes a lot of listening. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
because the time that we would each individually spend listening to the show is much more time than we actually get to spend playing the show together. We'll take a day or two before the gigs and get together and run through everything, but it's all the individual prep before that. But I'd say I spend the most time listening to it just to get,
Mm.
the vibe of what was happening, and how the jams went, and where everybody
Yeah.
was, and and that part, like you said, we try to be faithful in one sense to just like the basic arc of something musically, but then a lot of our own selves come through when we're improvising, and that's the part that I really am psyched about for the future, is just getting to play more so we can get to know what that chemistry is.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's so fun, and I think, like, the 2 shows in a row that you did in September, 95 show one night and then a 2000 show the next night. What was that? how did you approach that, like from your perspective, and the difference between those? Like, did you have a different mindset for each of those? Because, totally different eras for the
Yeah,
band. It's almost like a different band between those two nights.
absolutely. Much different mindset. And actually that New Haven show, 12/2/95, wasn't really typical 95 show for them. In 95 there was a lot of really extended improvs on tweezers and bowies and that kind of stuff. And they just didn't go there that night. I was at that show and the 2000 show both. So it was very different. I mean, the 2000 stuff is more, uh, it's more about groove,
Hmm.
and it's more about, leaving space at times. Whereas 95 was just, all in all the time at up here,
Yeah.
1000%. Yeah.
It was crazy, and like the Reba and the tweezer from that show, the Maze you guys did from the '95 show. I mean that whole show, both the shows were just so much fun. And I'm having so much fun following it as well. I guess the question is like, where do you see Reprise going? Like, what do you want it to become, or what do you hope over the next year, like that you guys can do?
I mean, I definitely want to be playing more. I want to be doing more shows with Reprise, and uh, I don't know what to say beyond that because we all have a lot of other stuff happening.
Yeah.
But I would just want to be playing more and just keep recreating these great shows from the '90s and have people come out and dig it. There's a lot of good possibilities for this Albany show coming up. There's
Yeah.
quite a few Albany gigs from 95, 97, 98, 99, 2000. So anything goes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gonna be great, and I do think like you guys pay such tribute to it because you guys all love the music so much, and it's super fun. So, everyone who, if you don't know, Reprise is playing in Albany on Saturday, November 2nd. You can get tickets. Just go to repriseband.com. There's a link to tickets there. Scott, congrats on the album. It's really cool. I think it's a great listen.
Thank you, RJ.
And
Here it is.
what's that?
Here it is.
And there it is. Yeah. When will it be out in the world? Is that Friday also?
Yes, the release date is Friday. So if you're up late, it'll be Thursday night at midnight. But I made CDs because I still think that art and music deserve a physical place somewhere in this universe.
Nice.
So I know people don't really have a way to play CDs as much anymore, but it was important to me. So
I think that's great. And you'll have some of those at the show on Friday, I assume.
yeah, I'll have them at the show, and you can get them on my website, scottchasolen.com. I don't sell them through CD Baby or anything like that because they steal money from artists. So
Yep.
I'm selling them myself.
Awesome. I will put a link to your website so people can check that out. And the album's called Full Circle. It'll be out on Friday. And then on Friday night, hang out with Scott and some other guys, Chris and those guys in New York at Bitter End. I think that's going to be a really fun night. So Scott, congrats on getting this out there. It's a great album. I'm really enjoying it. So
Thank you so much, RJ. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about it and listen to it. So thanks a lot.
yeah, of course. And everybody who's out there watching, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back on Friday afternoon. And if you're listening, you'll get a new episode on Friday afternoon also. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Scott.
Cool, man. I'll see you